Hello and welcome to another video from Mode 44. This series is going to be on the cyber kill chain and how this relates to Palo Alto firewalls and what we can do to hopefully block the attempts of a would-be hacker as they go through the cyber kill chain process. If you could like and subscribe, obviously only if you like the video, that would be absolutely awesome and it really helps. But you know, I'll leave that up to you. So moving on, the first part of the cyber kill chain is the reconnaissance. This is the part where the would-be hacker or the attacker is going to start probing the network, is going to start looking for what IP addresses you have, see if they can get some kind of response back to see what might be on the other side of that, and have a general sort of look around at your internet facing or your untrusted. I know it's not trendy to say untrusted anymore because in this whole world of zero trust nothing is trusted, but your traditional untrusted networks, so DMZs and internet facing interfaces. So as we know, on a Palo Alto firewall, an interface can only be a member of one zone. It can't be a member of multiple zones, but multiple interfaces can be members of the same zone. So the first thing to watch here is we just want to make sure that we don't have, or at least we know by design, that if we're going to have multiple interfaces, say in the internet zone, then they are going to be able to communicate with each other, assuming that you haven't already mitigated, removed, or otherwise edited or accounted for the intra-zone default rule. The intra-zone default rules, we know, just a quick review of that, is part of the default rules. It comes in the bottom here. So intra-zone default by default is allow. So when you first start up a firewall and you have an inside network, for instance, and you have BGP or whatever, just as an example, that's going to work because it's going to be allowed, because it's going to be BGP coming in inside to inside. So again, that works if you have if you have interfaces all in the internet zone, for instance, they will be able to communicate with each other unless you've otherwise taken account of this. And then our interzone default is a deny because it's secure by design. Straight out of the box, it doesn't allow communication out to the network or outside to the internet in any way, shape or form. So once we've got our interfaces, so our interface is going to have a security zone attached to them, and that's where we're going to do some of the configuration. But one of the first things that we see as we move down is the management profile. The management profile is going to be the first thing that could trip you up potentially. If you are allowing access in and you haven't controlled this properly, and your management profile that you put on your internet interface, for instance, allows or is like this, and administrative management services, it allows HTTPS and SSH, then people are going to be able to probe that. They're going to be able to try and get into the outside. They're going to have, you'll have the opportunity of brute forcing and so on, and then how we sort of fix that. A lot of this can be done and fixed within the zone protection profile, but as a general rule, I would say if you've got an internet facing interface or a DMZ facing interface, you probably wouldn't want administrative services. In fact, actually, you'd probably only want ping. However, you can put just a straight ACL on this, so if you did need it for some reason, but you only needed it explicitly from, say, a Bastion host or something like this, something that's got a known static IP address, you could just use that. You could, the permitted IP address is just this, and then just that means that interface management profile will only allow that IP. Network services is where we configure our ping, and the rest of it is response pages. Response pages was part of a security advisory in recent times from Palo Alto, because where you had a misconfiguration, it did rely on a misconfiguration, which was an inbound rule that had URL filtering on it, that also had block categories and stuff like that. An attacker could come in and they could spoof their target's IP address as their source address, and then continually keep hitting something that then sends a block response page or a continue response page. Over time, this would then increase the traffic to their intended targets' firewalls or whatever they're sending it to, and of course it would appear like it had come from you. You would appear as the attacker because it's being sent from your firewall. So that's our first port of call there, is to make sure we have the correct administrative services on the front, and we only have ping, I would suggest, in this particular instance. Okay, so then the next one itself, we go into the zone, So for the internet zone, we can see that we've got the log forwarding and everything so that we can get logs from it. But the two things we're looking at here are specifically the zone protection profile that is going to be added to this zone, which will then be every interface that is in this zone will be protected by. And then we've got the user identification ACL. I would suggest that anything that is externally facing would not need you to enable user identification. Again, there's something that can catch you out here. So if for user identification you are using WMI probing or something like that, and you've enabled it on this interface, that will send those probes out of that interface, and you could potentially start giving a lot of information out about your internal structure and your AD infrastructure. Zone protection profile, the only other tick box we have here is enable packet buffer protection. So this is going to enable the global setting for packet buffer protection. It has to be enabled globally and then per zone. So it's enabled globally and then per zone you enable the packet buffer protection. Don't know why you wouldn't. It would seem like the sensible thing to do. And then we select our zone protection profile. And of course we can have multiple zone protection profiles, but you can only have one per zone. So then coming down to our zone protection profiles, where we see this is again where we're going to start to block the ability for somebody to start enumerating our external interfaces. Flood protection is something else. That's the ICMP. You can control ICMP rates and so on. But what we're really interested in here at the minute is reconnaissance protection. So we don't want people to be able to do a host sweep. A host sweep is a little bit less, I would venture, if somebody was scanning from outside. A host sweep is a little bit less likely to happen because they've probably already got your external ranges, and so they could do a host sweep, but it's going to be a very small host sweep. Probably more if somebody is actually compromised and got inside, you're going to see a host sweep happen. At which point, of course, you have got other problems, and there's a lot of protections in between there, and we will start to look at that for protection against lateral movement and so on. But for the sake of this video, I want this video to be quite quick. I want it to be more of a quick reference than anything else. So TCP port scan and UDP port scan. One of the first things that people will go to is Mmap, and let's do a port scan. Let's see what ports are open. To give you an idea, there is multiple settings on Mmap for the rate at which this happens, and a lot of times you can get caught out by the interval, which is basically I view it as a sample size. So basically, within this period of time, did this amount of events happen? So if we look at the paranoid, which is T0. Only I would also venture as well that only the most determined of attackers would use this, because it's going to take a very, very long time. So when they're using the T0 option for their scans, that's going to scan one packet every 5 minutes. So in order to catch that, you are going to need to have, say, 700 seconds. So that's just over the 10 minutes. And we're going to look for 2 minimum there, and then we would potentially catch that happening on the paranoid. But you're also going to see a lot of traffic. You can see a lot of alerts based on that. Just to say as well, here we've got in the action we can have allow, alert, and block IP. If we go block IP, we can track it by the source or the source and destination. And then we can block that for 1 to 3600 seconds, as you saw there, and then that will block that IP for that period of time. We can alert, which just means we get a log, but if we have allow, just like with the URL filtering and things like that, if you have an allow, then you don't get an alert for it, so you don't get a log for that. So it's, well, pretty pointless in a way. So what we would tend to do then is we would tend to put it on alert. We set it for about 700. It does then change very much. So if they haven't got all the time in the world and they're on T0, if they go to T1, which is regarded as sneaky, that's going to scan one packet every 15 seconds. So you can see then you can change that then to every 15 seconds. So if you had say 20 seconds and 2, then you are going to look at, you'll be able to catch the sneaky one, then they go up to other ones, and you get to the point where it becomes that noisy that you'd notice it anyway. So then we have the same again for the UDP port scan, so we're going to do some port scans there. So the thing to do is to mess with these values a little bit and just work out what it is you need to have it set at to get the right level of information. Not too much information, because then you start chasing down rabbit holes, but the right level of events where you're catching the people that are actually scanning your network. Source address exclusion is very useful if you have, there's multiple platforms now that are out there that are used for legitimate purposes to scan the outside of your network, and so you can understand your attack surface and you can understand where you may or may not be vulnerable, based on the fact that some companies do in fact have exposure to the internet that they weren't aware of. Okay, so if you had a scanner and that's on 8.8.8.8, okay, so then we've got that in there, and we click OK. So then anything, of course, source address exclusion for the above, any of these is going to be ignored. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we want to try and look at making sure that, where possible, the potential source of malicious traffic, we try and block that to begin with anyway. And that can be done through the EDLs, external dynamic lists. So we have several that are built in, and of course you can then create your own. You can create your own from the multitude of lists that are out there that are updated daily. Some of them are updated in real time, and you can either subscribe to them. Some of them are subscription based, or some of them are free. You can get a Talos feed for free, as far as I'm aware. And of course there was the MindMeld instance that provided this as an aggregator of those feeds, as well as that Cortex XOR can also subscribe to those feeds, and then you can publish an EDL from Cortex XOR. Okay, but when we look at these, we can see we've got Tor exit IP addresses. You could argue that you probably don't want people in today's enterprises and today's businesses, if somebody is trying to access your environment or your front end or whatever from a Tor exit IP, they're actively trying to hide their identity. As a general rule, if somebody's actively trying to hide their identity, it doesn't necessarily mean they're up to no good, as is in this description here, but it's very possible they are up to no good. Bulletproof IP addresses, as you say here, these are bulletproof hosting providers, and they don't really sort of have many controls on whatever content or whatever is hosted on them. So as a general rule, it is usually malicious, or as it says here, illegal or unethical material. So that's more of a reaching out to it as well, but I would also suggest that based on the fact that somebody could source it from there, you'd probably want to block that as well. Then Palo Alto high risk IP addresses, which again is sort of going out as well as coming in. And then no malicious IP addresses as well. You don't want anybody coming from those. And how we use those is we create a policy, and then we're going to add it, and I would suggest as well, so we are going to EDL block malicious traffic. Okay, and then we are going to do, you could do source any, or you could do a source zone, but in this particular instance we're going to do any, destination zone any, and we are going to drop the traffic. And the reason I say drop the traffic is because we want to silently drop this. We don't want there to be any kind of notification going back, in my experience. If you want to do log at session start, since the sessions will never actually get going, then you do log at session start. What we really should do actually is, if I just go back here, and I'm going to block this coming in. Okay, so we're going to specify specifically this is coming in. And then we are going to go to add source address. We come down here and we can see we've got our external dynamic lists here. So we're going to know bulletproof addresses, high risk addresses. We go for Tor. No malicious. Okay, so now we have those in there. We can say now that anything coming into any zone from these source addresses, we are going to drop. Okay. Click OK. That's at the top, and this is just to show you as well how easy it is to actually create that security. Just one thing I have noticed there, and it's something I tend to I suffer with it quite a lot. So I'll just go back and show you. So basically, there's a problem with this rule, and the problem with this rule is this here, application default, because application default tends to suggest that what we're relying on is we're relying on all of our potential attackers and our would-be malicious people to use the correct ports, play cricket as it were. So I would change that to any, because you could see any application on any service at that point. Okay, so that's something that I would tend to do. We don't need a security profile because this is going to drop the traffic, so it's never going to go far enough. Remember that we do evaluate this across, and basically once we've got past the security policy side, which is this side, then we get into our profiles. So now what we're going to do is we're going to clone that one. When we clone it, we're going to put it in after the traffic in. Okay, and then we are going to do out, and we are going to change that. And then for the destination here, we're going to do it again. Yeah, just pause it there because you didn't want to watch me going through that. And again, so our destination addresses there are going to be the bulletproof IP addresses, Tor exit IP addresses. Now I appreciate it says Tor exit IP addresses, but you also don't want anything trying to communicate from inside going out to that destination as well, I would venture. Okay, we're going to do the same again because obviously we've cloned it, so it's all good. So we've got any application, we've got any service or URL category, and our action is going to be dropped because that's what we had before. We're also going to have log at session start and log at session end. You may want to tweak the log at session start and log at session end, just because you might get overwhelmed with logs. But I would also venture the opinion that if you are getting overwhelmed with logs, you've probably got a lot more to worry about based on what those are than the logs themselves. So then we're going to commit that, and then that's going to form our second protection against reconnaissance, because we're going to make sure now that we can't. Not necessarily against reconnaissance, but what we're saying now is that anywhere that we suspect or has the high probability of being malicious or somebody's trying to disguise what they're doing, we're going to block that before it gets anywhere near. We can also do this by region as well, and I'm not going to go into any particular reason why you would want to do it by region, just purely and simply because I'm not interested in anything other becoming remotely political. But you can block. If you don't have, let's say you don't have anybody at all in a specific country or whatever by region, then you can block from that region. But bear in mind that that's not always going to help you. And I mean, the fact is that if you want to block it from a certain country, and if somebody's trying to get to you from that country, if that country is known to be a little bit risky, let's say, chances are they're going to use a VPN anyway. So you'd probably want to look for an EDL or something that contains VPN exit IPs. Okay, so that's going to deal with our recon at the minute, and that's going to stop, once we've got that on the interfaces and everything, that's going to stop us being able to have, or at least having any kind of notification for things like the TCP or UDP ports. I'm just going to go back to our network for a minute and just do it, because I don't think I actually did. So our external zone protection, for our reconnaissance protection, what we're going to do is we're going to go for the 5 and the 20. So 20 events in 5 seconds, which is that's not what we said, was it? So I think if we're going to capture now, so if we say 5 minutes, so 300 seconds. Let's do this properly, and then we're going to go for 5 events. So 300. 5 events. Okay, that's going to give us a good coverage there. But again, you'd have to check and make sure and then we can block these. If we do a block action as well, then that block action also gives us our log to say it's been blocked. Okay, so then that's going to do that. We're going to allow our host sweep for some unknown reason, but we probably want to set that to alert. And so that's going to give us our recon protection from the outside coming in. So that's part of the cyber kill chain. Hope this video has been useful. So the next stage in the cyber kill chain is going to be the weaponization one. Now, weaponization as a general rule is done outside of any network that you're trying to attack. So you've done your reconnaissance, and then you've decided how you're going to start weaponizing something in order to be able to start to attack that target. As a result of it being done externally to anything to do with the firewall, and so basically in the hacker's own bedroom or wherever they happen to be, because of that, there's very little any firewall can do, let alone a Palo Alto firewall, to help that. So what we're going to do is we're going to move straight on. The next video is going to be about the delivery of the weaponized payload, so how it gets delivered and how we can start to detect it being delivered. Okay, so again, I hope this has been useful for you. This video has been useful. Please like and subscribe, and leave a thumbs up. It's all good. And any comments, let me know. And if I did at any point refer to the cyber kill chain as the cyber key chain, I do apologize. See you next time.